So next week at AEW, they're going to have Maximum Carnage, and this is a very, very big opportunity for Powerhouse Hobbs. Like honestly, he can become the AEW champion, and this represents a possible polar shift in AEW. So honestly, they really need to establish that this is a new year, they're going in a new direction, and I really think that getting Powerhouse Hobbs is the right thing to do. And there's a lot of just, talking points about this. And I'll go through it. But, I think that Powerhouse Hobbs needs to be the AEW champion. And that's going to help out the company in a lot of ways. And I think like the first big reason is that it can kill the Death Riders. Because honestly, the whole Moxley and Death Rider thing, it's not working out. And there are a couple of endings for this. It can go all the way until All In, where Bryan Danielson comes back and becomes the champion. It can go all the way to Revolution, where Adam Copeland becomes the champion. Or it can go all the way to All In, where Darby Allin comes back from Mount Everest and becomes a champion. So if you do that, then you're ultimately saying, okay, this storyline that's not been working, that is pulling people away, that's actually seen a huge decrease in ratings, we're going to keep this alive for another like 5 or 6 months really. And then we have to think about the Australia show. You're having a show in Los Angeles, and you have at least like 3 or 4 more pay-per-views. You have your Las Vegas Double or Nothing pay-per-view, and I think they said with All In they drawed like 10,000 people so far, and it's a 50,000 seat arena. So it does not make sense at all for them to keep the title on Moxley if it's just not going to be selling anything out, really. You got to say, enough is enough with this insanity. It's not working. We need to try a new person. So killing the Death Riders is the best thing for business. The next thing that I would say is that it adds a bunch of different unpredictability elements, because this with the Death Riders, they're trying to have Darby Allin take it away. That's what a lot of people are saying it's going to happen. Really, if you have Hobbs as the champion, you have a bunch of different things. You could have Moxley and him have a rematch in Australia. You can do something where you have the Don Callis family go after Hobbs, or you can do something where you can do like Hobbs versus Lashley at Revolution. And you can also even do something like, Hobbs has wrestled all types of people. So he and Swerve can have a great match. He and Will Ospreay can have a great match. So there's a lot of like different, things that you can do really, So do we want to see the Death Riders kind of continue on, or do we want to see something new and different? The next big thing that it does is that in AEW, they've not pushed the big men that well, really. And I think what they say is that the Young Bucks and Tony and everybody just don't want to push big men because that's just not what they're into. Like they don't want it to be like the Hogan and WWE, and type of thing, really. But the big problem is that, you have to do things differently. Like I think that most of their champions are, medium weight, really. Like I weigh around 220 pounds. That's kind of been their champions, but you've never seen a super jacked champion. You've never seen, like Hobbs, lifting Big Show, or Hobbs lifting Fallah Bahh as champion. You've not seen that stuff really. So it would make sense to be like, okay, well, now let's try a real like big heavyweight type of wrestler. Is that going to actually, draw really? And if it does really. So it's good to just give new people a chance. If it's, as I said, if it's not been working with Moxley, if you've been going down with Bryan Danielson, and you've not booked Swerve that well as a champion, like try somebody new and different. And I would also say that the other thing that I like about Hobbs is that he's a really great talker on the microphone, and he has a lot of people backstage. There's people like Mark Henry who's behind him. You also have Big Show be behind him. There's a lot of like veterans who are actually behind him. So they are going to protect Hobbs. So they're not going to do something like, okay, you're going to be like Swerve, where you randomly appear throughout the show. Or if you take the title off of Jon Moxley, it's going to be Jon Moxley and MJF and Jeff Jarrett doing segments. No, they're going to be like, okay, Hobbs is the champion. You need to put the camera on him. He needs to be walking out during either the opening on opening 9 o'clock or main event. Really, we're going to actually make him matter for a couple of months, really, just to see how it is. So I think that that's going to help him out a lot, really, because, and it's also good because you got a champion that the company really wants to push. And that's what you need. But you cannot have a champion, like I said, like you have other people, like last year you had Swerve be the champion, but the show was really about the Young Bucks. And now it's really about the Moxley faction, and all that stuff, really. So you really have to kind of say, you know what, enough of the insanity. We need to actually push Hobbs strongly. We need to see what he can do with that title. And since he can talk in the microphone, and since he can have like memes like "I'm big, I'm black, I'm Jack," I'm gonna make Moxley my bitch, and other things like that. If it is drawing, it is getting attention, really. So why not just keep that going, really. So it makes a lot of sense for them to actually be like, okay, if we make him a champion, there's going to be people there that are going to say, okay, you know what, you're going to make sure Hobbs is actually featured that well and that prominently because that's good for everybody. You just don't sugarcoat it. And I would say the next thing is that it's a good risk. Because a lot of times in AEW, they don't take a lot of great risks. You look at something like what happened last month at World's End, nobody changed the titles. And the reason why nobody changed the titles was because everybody wanted to go into Wrestle Kingdom and Wrestle Dynasty with a championship. A lot of the AEW wrestlers were competing in Japan, so they were kind of like, okay, nobody can lose their titles because all these wrestlers are going to appear in Japan, really. So what would happen if you had like somebody lose a title and then they're like, okay, I want to regain it, or now I want to go after another title in Japan, and that should be a big deal, really, So yeah, it's a good risk to say, okay, you know what, the Moxley thing's not working. Definitely these long title reigns or these things where we're having our wrestlers wrestle in Japan and we want to celebrate them as, multiple company champions. They have a Japanese title, they have a New Japan title, they have like a British title, they have a Stardom title, a Ring of Honor title, and then they also have a AEW title. So we want that to be with Moxley. We want him to be the AEW champion because eventually we're going to have him wrestle for a Japanese title. So that weighs all that stuff, really. So when you have risk and you take creative risks, you're saying, okay, no, since that's not working out and we get criticized for that, we're actually going to just, put the title on somebody else, the top title on somebody else. We're going to try a new creative direction. We're going to freshen things up, really. We're going to take some risk. And actually people respect that in companies, so it does everything great. And then I think the next thing that I'll say is that you only have two of the big four left, really. I know like Sammy's one of them, but right now your big four and what I mean by the big four are just young talents that have gotten over in AEW. There's only two talents that I can think can become AEW champion. One is Powerhouse Hobbs, and the other one is Kyle Fletcher. Will Ospreay does not count because he's been established in NJPW. But right now, it's really Kyle Fletcher and Powerhouse Hobbs. Sammy Guevara does not have it. Jack Perry does not have it. Darby Allin's going to get it one day. So, and MJF has already had it, really. So you only have like three people left. You have Darby Allin, Kyle Fletcher, and Powerhouse Hobbs. So you really have to kind of tell your audience, also that if you invest in somebody for years and years and they just start out in the company, or they're a young person and they put time into this company, they can become the champion, really. So that's really, really good. It gives you a good long-term investment. Again, why do we like NXT? Because Bray Wyatt, Roman Reigns, Braun Breaker, and a lot of other people in NXT eventually become the WWE champion, or they win like major titles, or that they're gonna have big matches at WrestleMania in the future. So it gives you something to invest in, and it also kind of fixes a lot of problems because a lot of people will say, okay, well, look at Powerhouse Hobbs. you're actually looking at somebody who, you know, is not lost in the roster. He's where he needs to be. He looks like a heavyweight wrestler. He looks like he can dominate people. He's one of the few wrestlers that can have like 2-on-1 matches or 3-on-1 matches and actually, you know, really dominate. So it makes a lot of sense, really. You know, it makes a lot of sense for Hobbs to be in that spot. I also think in another sense, it really loosens up the booking, because you can do, as I said, you can do Hobbs versus Lashley, Hobbs versus Adam Copeland, Hobbs versus Kyle Fletcher, Hobbs versus Takeshita, Hobbs versus Brian Cage, Lance Archer, Hobbs versus Jeff Jarrett, Hobbs versus MJF, you know, Hobbs versus Claudio, Hobbs versus Moxley, Hobbs versus Pac. You know, there's so many people on that roster that you can do. It really, really freshens things up a lot. Or you can do something like say, okay, well, Moxley's not working, so we're going to do Moxley versus Adam Copeland, and then we're going to do the Young Bucks and FTR and Adam Copeland all at Double or Nothing, and then you're going to have Darby Allin versus Moxley and all the other stuff that we kind of know is kind of predictable right now. So it freshens up the booking a lot. And then also you can even do something like you can say like, okay, what if Powerhouse Hobbs joins the Hurt Syndicate? What if Powerhouse Hobbs joins back with the Don Callis family and becomes a heel? What would happen if you have Powerhouse Hobbs join FTR and Adam Copeland? There's a lot of just, you know, stuff that you can do with this. You know, and then also, too, you can even set up a fatal four-way. You can set up something where Hobbs gains the title, he loses it to Christian, and then you have like a fatal three-way or fatal four-way. And I think with Hobbs, you know, he is a wrestler that, you know, if you are having a fatal four-way match and Hobbs is in it, that would be something a lot of people will want to see, because we all know with Hobbs, you're going to get a bunch of carnage and everything like that, really. So he can also be one of those champions that actually, you know, that actually can lose a title but gain it back and do a really good job with it, you know. So there's a lot of positives, and as I said, I think, like, and I may reiterate this, but I really think that, you know, he needs to become champion. They really, really need to freshen a lot of things up in AEW. The Moxley thing's not working; it's killing the ratings, and ultimately, it's an excuse, I think, for right now to be like, okay, you know what, maybe they don't know what to do with Hobbs, or maybe they just say, okay, there's a lot of creative risk that we can take. There's a lot of like different ideas we can do with Hobbs, but we don't want to do that. We want to stick with Moxley because we have them all written down. And even if the ratings go down, we want to stick with Moxley. That's just not how you do things. If something's not working, eventually you have to give it up, really. So I think, you know, for all purposes, I really, really hope Hobbs wins. He is the right wrestler to be the AEW champion right now, and this Moxley shit has to end. So I do hope AEW makes the right decision and put the title on Hobbs. And I think also the other thing that I'll say is that, you know, if Moxley's not drawing that much, you know, why not try a different champion? You know, see what Hobbs can draw, really. So I think for all these reasons, these are all, like, you know, good reasons to say that, you know what, Hobbs needs to be the guy to win the AEW championship next week. I don't think it's going to happen, but if it does happen, it does a lot more positives than negatives.